Welcome everyone to the third Mauritius Africa FinTech Hub webinar. This second edition of our opportunities and challenges facing FinTech in post-COVID Mauritius. Today's session is focused on the future of digital payments. We'll just be starting proceedings very shortly. We're just allowing all of the delegates to enter the room. In the meantime, I'd like to alert you to our Q&A function, which if you're not familiar with the Zoom interface, there is a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, and this is the way in which you can submit questions for today's panelists. If you have a question that is directed at a specific delegate, a specific panelist, sorry, please indicate to whom you would like the question addressed. Apart from that, you should be able to see all of the questions coming in. We look forward to answering them at the end of the session. Thank you. Okay, it looks like we're ready to begin. So I'll say it again, sorry, for those of you who've already been in the room, you're probably already sick of me saying this, but welcome everybody to the third Mauritius Africa FinTech Hub webinar series. This one focused on the future of digital payments in Mauritius. We're very pleased today to have 4 panelists and our moderator present. I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce our moderator, Darren Franks. Darren is the founder and CEO of TalentintheCloud, Africa's only dedicated executive search firm that focuses exclusively on the fintech sector. He's also a strategic partner and ambassador to the African Women in Fintech and Payments Network, Fidexible's ambassador to Africa, and one of the founding members of the South African FinTech Hub, which is part of the African FinTech Network. So thank you very much for joining us, Darren.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for the kind introduction, and thank you for inviting me to moderate today's session. Hi everyone, very nice to meet you. Greetings from a rather sunny South Africa. I hear the weather's nice today in Mauritius. But without further ado, I'd very much like to introduce our panelists today. I'm going to give them opportunity to probably introduce themselves, actually. So Aswin, perhaps we can start with you from the Bank of Mauritius. Would you like to give a quick introduction, tell everyone a bit about who you are and what you do for the Bank of Mauritius?
Yep. Hi, everyone. So nice to be here. In fact, we are quite lucky today. We're a bit sunny, not that much. So I'm from Bank of Mauritius. So I work within the payment system division. I look after the national payment switch. So I pretty much, when I joined the bank, so I was involved in setting up the national payment switch, and we're trying to get this ecosystem built up nowadays. So I'm looking forward for a fruitful session with all the panelists for today. Over to you, Darren.
Aswin, thank you very much. And whilst you're there, Tilotma, would you like to give a quick introduction as well?
Yeah, hi, thanks, Darren. Hi, everybody. So I'm Tilotma Jhurry from the Bank of Mauritius, head of the Payment Systems Division. I've been working with the Payments Division for nearly 10 years now. So I've been involved in mostly on the regulatory side of the payments system that the bank has been implementing over the last 10 years. And I hope that we have a very interactive session, because that will help us in getting the feel of the public, and that will help us in moving forward with the digitalization of payments in Mauritius. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Thank you for the kind introduction. Sebastien, would you like to give an introduction as well?
Yes. Hi, everybody. I'm Sebastien, the founder and director of MIPS. I would define myself as a digital Darwinist. I will define it later, perhaps. And my leitmotiv is Mark Twain's quote: "They did not know it was possible, so they did it." And the leitmotiv of my company, MIPS, is just payment connecting worlds, and my job is to do a lot of coffee every day and to make hopefully good things and cool things, and very glad to be here. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. And Vincent, over to you, sir.
Hello, I'm Vincent. I've been Chief Operating Officer of MCB for a little bit over 4 years now. But I'm looking also at the digital transformation. So we're investing a lot. We have a digital factory with revising all the journeys of the bank, including payments, also innovation and data. I think the transformation of the bank now is by domain. So we have payment credits, which are the two main priorities for this year, and also a big focus on SME. So I'm looking forward to this webinar to exchange and flush ideas.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And I think we're going to start actually with an open question to the panelists. And Vincent, I know you've prepared some data on this. I think it's important that we understand the current climate and how the COVID-19 situation has impacted and affected what's happening in Mauritius, specifically with regards to digital payments. So open question to the panel, how have you seen things over the last 4 or 5 months? I can't believe it's been this long, but how have you found things? Vincent, would you like to sort of lead this part of the conversation?
Yeah. I mean, the lockdown came very suddenly in all the world, but especially in Mauritius. And overnight, the supermarkets were closed, etc. So people had to actually pay. And I think the COVID boosted the digital payment. Just a few figures. If I look at the card thing, first, the usage of the card went booming. Especially on the e-commerce, we had 14,000 new e-commerce customers and over 373% of new e-commerce merchants. There's a lot of activities to sell anything from fruits to, I mean, the basic thing, and it's in value. It's been reaching 400% more from a very low level, but that just gives some idea of the figure. Contactless payments as well. I think the whole industry invested into contactless, so just tap and go. We've been upgrading our POS, and we've been upgrading also uplift the limit at 2,500 rupees. And we had like almost 4 times more contactless transactions and 50% more grow during the COVID. And things, interestingly enough, are staying. So people are getting used to both the e-commerce that went down a bit, but also the contactless. In terms of the payments, we've been looking at a very large usage of our mobile channel, so Juice. We had about 200% more Juice payments over the lockdown period. Interestingly enough, things are going up in terms of the volumes, the value after the lockdown by 20%. And in terms of internet banking, we saw during the period, and it's probably more linked to corporate, a 20% decrease during the lockdown. So you can see some trends also on the ATM, the cash. We had a 50% drop of cash withdrawal at ATMs. So just that gives you a bit of the picture, at least from the MCB means of payment.
Thank you. I think it would be fair to say that the COVID-19 situation has definitely accelerated digitization, not only for financial services and fintechs, but for the broader economy. Sebastien, you got something to add to this as well?
I just want to jump. I don't know if it is a good English expression of what Vincent said. I think that we finally had the answer to this long-lasting question. Everybody was asking me that, are Mauritians ready for e-commerce and digital payments in general? And the answer is, of course, yes, but the good question would have been, is the market ready to offer an e-commerce opportunity to Mauritius. You know, I have an analogy I would take is like cars, you know, were people ready to switch from horses to cars, or was the market ready to offer cars, and by the way, bring in third party to come and play into the cars ecosystem, filling station, traffic laws, just laws, you know, which I see that shall surround as a protection of a feature and not the inversions. And therefore, after COVID, we had the proof that, you know, Darwinism, the theory of evolution, is not only acting only at a biological level, but also at a digital level, with what I call the digital Darwinism, with COVID-19 being a catalyst for digital evolution of offering and on the demand. But I will perhaps later come longer on what I call digital Darwinism. And COVID-19 was a catalyst, like I will come, I think, later, longer on that after.
Absolutely. And I think there's another element to this, which I know we're going to cover a little bit later on, but is about the regulatory frameworks as well, and how they have adapted very, very quickly and nimbly to, you know, the sort of the crisis, and being able to relax some of the sort of constraints around, you know, the tap and go, the limits, Vincent, that you mentioned as well. So I think there's obviously been a lot of positive work by the regulator. Anything else from the Bank of Mauritius? Any comments on what you've seen in the market?
We have also noted a significant increase in the number of transactions that were processed on our systems. But from our side, we saw a preference for mobile payments compared to cards. But in that respect, I'll leave Aswin to give you more details, because he's the one who is working directly with these two systems.
So yeah, so it was, in fact, I wouldn't say only COVID-19. So since 2019, pretty much at the end of 2019, I think there was a sort of change of payments trends within Mauritius. We saw that there was a sort of pickup with mobile payment. And pretty much when we're looking at it post the COVID-19, we saw a sort of short drop, let's say, in card usage. And then we started seeing the mobile payment picking up. But then personally, I've also seen that e-commerce is also picking up as well. And Sebastien last time was mentioning how so many companies came to him asking to get e-commerce onboarded. And we've seen it also from Bank of Mauritius. And this is the second part, which I'm going to talk about also, is the instant payment, where we're trying to bring this facility in place so that those fintechs can plug in, so that to interconnect everyone and get that playing level field system. So I concur with what Sebastien mentioned. Is Mauritius ready for e-commerce? I mean, we're starting to build that ecosystem, right? So it's something which is coming now. And I think we have a part to play into it, and all the different players have the same role to play as well. So it's quite interesting. And also, I'm going to jump a bit on what I'm seeing also around the world, which shouldn't be neglected, because the Bank of Mauritius is also looking what payment trends, what is happening around the different regions as well. And we've seen strangely, like many countries are now starting to also consider the central bank digital currency. Especially, I'm seeing that in many jurisdictions where they are considering for low value transaction. Something which, you know, central banks were not even thinking about. I mean, they were, but the COVID-19 has a bit pushed things a bit more. So we're seeing a lot going around with digitalization. And I think, as everyone mentioned, so COVID-19 has sort of accelerated that.
And the Bank of Mauritius is also exploring the possibility to introduce a central bank digital currency.
Wow, fantastic. That's very, very exciting. I think that's probably a whole separate topic, I would imagine, but that's insightful. Thank you. And Aswin, you were just obviously mentioning a comment that Sebastien made about sort of the entrepreneurial journey or the sort of SME businesses. And Vincent, you know, some amazing figures there in terms of growth or adoption, I think is probably a more relevant term. Sebastien, I think we're going to move on to the next part of this topic, or the next part of this webinar, which is talking about entrepreneurs and how have they been impacted, positively or otherwise, by the situation, but obviously specifically from a payments perspective. But perhaps we can move on to the next slide, Lisa. I don't know if you're popping some slides up, but let's understand what that impact has been and what are the challenges facing entrepreneurs, SME businesses now when adopting payments solutions. Sebastien, over to you. You're the expert in this.
Thanks. So let me jump into the water, and I will just now specify. Thank you, Darren. What I said about digital Darwinism. You know, I think that digital payments are a natural evolution and logic, mathematical evolution of commerce in general. I would make an analogy with, for example, dinosaurs and mammoths. You know, dinosaurs was wiped out of the surface of the planet by an asteroid. This was a huge, unique, punctual event. Mammoths, according to theories, I don't know, but let us say it's true, went out with a brutal climate change. You know, that was one punctual event. Sorry for my bad English, Mauritians, but I'm Mauritian speaking normally. And finally, commerce and digital payments also had its huge event in the ecosystem, which was COVID. In a scientific logic, you know, I think that commerce was and is continuously evolving, you know, starting with truck. I don't know the dates or whatever, but the beginning of commerce was a truck. Then a huge catalyst came, the navigation. When navigation came, okay, we had something that represent the value of the money. So you have shells, for example, in the beginning. Then we had metallurgy, which came. We had pennies, you know, coins coming, representing a value. Then digitalization came, etc., etc. And now at a micro evolution, not a macro evolution, but a micro evolution level, we had Mr. COVID-19 who came. And what did he do, Mr. COVID-19? He forced us to evolve, to make commerce evolve, but digitally, you know, and I'm not talking only about e-commerce. I'm talking about what Bank of Mauritius and Vincent said also about digital payments, contactless payments, etc. So e-commerce is part of, but not only digital payments. And yes, of course, during COVID, it went up because it was like an asteroid coming, and then it forced merchants and consumers to go digital. So it was a catalyst and a cataclysm and a catalyst, both. So it's, you know, the Darwinism is adapt or perish. So either you are agile and you adapt quickly to the new paradigm, the new change of rules, let us say, in commerce in general. So we go digital, but digital is wide. We can define it later if you want. And challenges for little, especially SMEs, but I found that SMEs adapt themselves quicker and smarter than big companies, and that's logical. Like, and the asteroid came, the big animals went out, and the little resist. That was, you know, it's being agile. So I think that businesses, they have two challenges. One towards e-commerce. It's a simple fact. Logistic. Okay, that was a huge issue, logistic, which is not e-commerce, which is just part of ecosystem of e-commerce, the logistic, you know, delivery for retailers, I'm telling. But I think that the main pain point for SMEs and companies was to, you know, the little merchant, he knows how to sell his shoes, you know, he doesn't know how to go digital. And digital is not only e-commerce, it's just to equip himself with softwares that will do the job quicker than, you know, his little paper and little receipts, you know. And the main issue is that perhaps companies generally were not equipped in their culture to go as quick as that digital. And some won the race, some didn't lose, just are a little bit backward. But COVID-19 forced us to change paradigm and go into what we call digital Darwinism. Darren, I will stop there because I think I will speak too much.
No, that's great. Listen, I love the analogies. It brings it all to life. I do think that, for the mums and pop shops, so, for cash trade, which is obviously, prevalent across the continent, right? It's not just Mauritius. Making that transition into accepting digital payment. I think let's just focus on digital payments. So having the acceptance for digital payments, and we Vincent spoke about, contactless as well. What advice would you give? And I'm not quite sure if there are sort of entrepreneurs listening to this, and maybe not mums and pop shops, but maybe people that are looking at setting up, e-commerce businesses and what have you. What sort of advice would you give if you want to transition into more of a digital business and accept online payments? What should someone be looking for?
Sorry, Darren, the answer was asked to whom?
To you, actually. I'm putting you on the spot.
Sorry.
Yeah. This is your moment. I'm giving you your moment.
I thought I spoke too much yet.
Carry on.
The advice would be, don't think that something expensive is better than something, I don't know the English word cheap, because cheap is pejorative in English. First thing, don't think that go digital, wow, how would I do? That's complicated. No, guys, just play with pure players like Fintechs and third parties who know what they are doing, and there are more and more talents in Mauritius. So first thing, don't be afraid. Be like Christophe Colomb, to be the first one. And what was the only obstacle? It was fear. And what was called at this age, the terra incognita, the unknown lands, Go on unknown lands, because you will be accompanied, I think it's a good English word, by Mauritian or not Mauritian, but you have good guys in Mauritius, but not good, genuine, smart guys in Mauritius who can accompany you to your digital transformation. It's a trendy word, the expression that you use it, to your digital transformation, especially focused on digital payments. But digital payments, I insist on one thing. It means nothing if it is not surrounded by a digital ecosystem. So this is why our baseline is payment connecting worlds with an S. The merchant have a world of third-party partners. Excel is a third-party partner, accounting software, I don't know, a distribution line. So digital payment is, for our point of view, the gravitational center of what regroup every merchant, the exchange of value, it is payment, we exchange a value. How can we use the act of payment to reunify all the worlds gravitating around the operational problematics of a merchant using digital? And so my advice with this long word, don't be afraid, even if you are at some age, and you're running your company since 40 years with your little paper, don't be afraid. We have in Mauritius competent people who can accompany you in your digital transformation. That's it, Darren.
Fantastic. Sebastien, thank you. I know you touched on the fintech ecosystem, and I think we'll come back to that a little bit later on, because that's obviously very pertinent, and some of the Mauritian African fintech hub is there to facilitate. So we will come back to that. We're going to move on to the next point, and we're talking about the infrastructure, the technology infrastructure around payments. There's been lots of questions that have been coming through, and I promise everyone I'm not ignoring those. We will get to those as quickly as we can, hopefully towards the end. There's a lot of questions about blockchain and crypto. Aswin, I'm going to bring you into this part, if we may. So looking at what's happening on the technical development side at the Bank of Mauritius, how have they helped open up the market for fintechs, and also the incumbents that are servicing customers? Because I think that's the ultimate thing here, isn't it? It's about the customer, the end customer. So what have been some of the developments that the Bank of Mauritius has put in over the last 4 or 5 months, or maybe slightly before that as well?
Thanks, Darren. So in fact, I'll just bounce back a bit on what Sebastien also mentioned about FinTech. So FinTech, I think one of the things about what we need, FinTech is there to simplify finance. Okay, so it brings a certain simplicity to the way we do payments, the way we see the financial world. Today, we got a lot of the banking sector is working properly, but then there is certain processes where fintechs come in and try to enhance them and facilitate and bring some convenience to people. So I think what we're seeing now, what is the trend today? We're seeing people looking for convenience. I think that's the mindset of people when we talk about fintech. What are the gaps there in order to bring convenience, right? So Bank of Mauritius, we started thinking about it. So since I joined Bank of Mauritius, there was already a big team looking after how we could have an impact on the payment system within Mauritius, because we knew that there was a certain limitation. We see it because we still, I'm still amazed seeing people queuing up at ATMs just to get cash out and then going and paying to a merchant when the merchant has a POS next to him. So it's something we've looked at it, and we knew that card is there. Yes, it's been there for a while now. I think since 2000, it's been in Mauritius, but we are not seeing that real digital pickup in that respect. And then we saw the emergence of mobile with Juice, Mighty Money, Entel Money, SBM mobile banking. But then what we also saw was that they were not interoperable. So if you had Juice, you would be limited only to your Juice. If you want to go to an e-commerce website, if they don't support Juice, so you can't do those type of transaction. So we thought Bank of Mauritius could have something to do with it in order to interlink those players. So we wanted to create a new sort of payment rail, and that's where the instant payment system came into play. So it was born based on the idea that what is happening within all the different markets, the European markets specifically. We saw the emergence of PSD. So it started with PSD, and then we saw the limitation on the PSD, which moved to PSD2. But that also had certain limitation in the sense that there were API that was shared to everyone, but each entity. So if you imagine all the fintechs having to adapt their specification according to what the different banks would disclose as API. So we thought that could be a sort of problem for the fintech, and it won't be on an economy of scale, especially in the Mauritian market. It wouldn't be worth it. So we thought, why not have something centrally at the Bank of Mauritius, interconnecting all the participants, and then exposing a sort of API that participants will just have as a standard. Now, by saying so, we need to establish a certain rule which would be fair to everyone. And this is where we sort of ensuring that aspect. I think Mrs. Jhurry will discuss a bit about the NPS Act and what the different regulation we have in order for every players to be part of that ecosystem. Because at the end of the day, what we want to do is for the country, right? So we want everyone to be part of that ecosystem, have new players, and we also want to see how, in fact, the banks can interact with the fintech, right? So it's not the fintech replacing the bank, because that's not the aim. The aim is for them to work together to see how those two can complement each other and bring new product to the market, bring new type of things that we were not even aware of. So I was thinking about that yesterday. In fact, I was thinking, how do I tell my 4-year-old daughter what I'm doing as a job? If I tell her I put a switch in Bank of Mauritius, she will be bored within 5 minutes, right? So I say to myself, she likes trains. So Bank of Mauritius, in fact, we are like the central train station, right? So we put the infrastructure there. We are the central station. We're putting the rails. All the different participants are just cities, okay? They got 9 cities. Before the national payment switch came in, there were 9 cities being isolated. The only way for you to travel there was to take an aeroplane, okay? So you have to take an aeroplane, go out of Mauritius, and then come back to Mauritius. Doesn't make sense, right? So what we did was we put the rails. Now, which trains are allowed? this is where Mr. Jhurry will talk a bit. So this is the regulation, right? We need to ensure that the right trains are on the track and that they stay on the track, because if they get sidelined as they are going through the track, this is not good for the country, right? So because we need to ensure that the passengers are safely going to their destination. To ensure everyone got the same playing field, all cities are open to all participants who are part of that ecosystem, right? So we got the rails nowadays. I think there's already a question on the QA, when will all the participants be on instant payment? So we've already targeted that by end of August, we should have all the banks on our platform, okay? So this is one of our objectives at the moment. So we want that central station to be there. We've put a lot of money in order to have the necessary infrastructure to support that resilience, to ensure those rails are working, and that the trains that are on those rails do reach their destination, okay? So some of those features, I don't know if I still got some time, I'm being a bit sidelined now,
yeah,
but then the instant payment today, some of those features are that you would be able to do a transaction within 30 seconds, okay? Then we are also having what we call alias. This means that through a mobile number, you could do a payment to someone else from any bank, any participant, any wallet. From any participant, you will also be able to register the wallet or the account from any other banks. Okay, so whichever application you want to use, you can use it. And from that application, you can register any account within any bank or any participant within the national payment switch. We have also put in place a national QR code, which means that any QR code being displayed at any merchant, which is part of this ecosystem, would be accepted by all the participants. Okay, and because this is one major issue, and I think Sebastien can comment on that. If you have an e-commerce platform today, if your QR code is not being accepted by one bank or the other, so it's very difficult for the person to then try to use it. You can't transact because this QR code is not being accepted. So that's why we put in place that national QR code, so that everyone needs to accept it. Everyone needs to use that standard. Yeah. Then we also expecting to have new features coming up, like billers. So we want billers to be integrated so that they can expose a certain API, so that all the other participants can then expose that to their different customers, users. We are also a bit revamping our direct debit and EFT platform. So this is something which is upcoming. And of course, we know that there is a huge amount of cash which is going for government payments. So in that respect, we are supporting the government in trying to find ways in digitalizing those payments. There's a lot of work being done by the government, and we are there to support them in order to help towards this. Just seeing on a chart, is Bank of Mauritius coming up with open banking standard? We already have a standard, so it's based on the ISO 220, which is a standard which is respected worldwide. So we've decided to put that standard in place, and this is what is exposed as a standard. And then the last item I would just touch base here is that as we mentioned, we are also working on CBDC, so central bank digital currency. And we're trying to go towards central bank digital currency in order to move further into our digitalization. Okay, so we're taking a step forward in it. We know a lot of central bank working towards it. We are not there yet. So like Sweden, if everyone knows about the Sweden market, today's Sweden market is almost cashless. So if you go to a merchant and you present cash, maybe they will refuse you. So we are not there yet, but still, this is something we can inspire to reach at a certain moment within this ecosystem that we're building. So that's one of the aspects where our commitment, the commitment of the Bank of Mauritius, to move very fast on that digitalization. And I would like to also mention that to reach that stage, right, we need the support of all stakeholders. And so far, we had a lot of support from the banks, so commercial bank, like Vincent, even Vincent was within the office telling us, giving us feedback on how we could improve our ecosystem. So all the banks are very much excited about that instant payment system. And, you know, hearing about them, getting their feedback is very important for us. And this is why I think even this session is very important for us and giving us a lot of opportunity to create that awareness. So one last thing is we can put in all those digital infrastructure. I think one thing we shouldn't forget also is awareness. We need, for us to be able to get merchants to adopt that digitalization, we need a lot of awareness. Okay, so the Bank of Mauritius is working towards that, but I think all those stakeholders, be it fintech, commercial bank, needs to work on that as well. You know, we need to sort of discourage people from going to ATM and move towards digital payment. I think this awareness part of it is very important for us to move to the next level. And I think this should come hand in hand with whatever infrastructure we put in place. Darren, I don't know if I blew up my time, but I'll leave the floor back to you so that if, or else I would just continue.
It is a little bit, but that's fine. No, that's fine. You're the Bank of Mauritius. You're allowed to. That's fine. I did have another question, but hopefully we'll get to that towards the end, which is just about, you know, looking at Mauritius versus some of the other markets on the continent, and you know, what sort of comparisons we can draw. Before we move on to the next point, there was a really interesting question, and Lisa, I don't know whether you're there. Perhaps you can come in and answer this one, because I know that you know, Mauritian African FinTech Hub has done a lot of research on this. It was a question from Melina, which says, is user research being conducted in Mauritius to gather data from the Mauritian people to understand the specificities of developing fintech in the local context? It'd be interesting to understand the demographic patterns, who is using digital payments more, and what are the hesitations and pain points expressed by people. Lisa, do you have any views on that? Do you have any data?
Yeah, so MAFH actually conducted our first ecosystem survey in 2019, the results of which were published last October. And from that, we have been gathering data around who the players are in the ecosystem and everyone's contributions. And this year we're running a version 2, a greatly expanded version of that. So we will be, we're developing that at the moment, and we'll be conducting that research on the ground, addressing all the players in the ecosystem, including that consumer base. And that's a survey that we hope to have published in October this year. So you can look forward to seeing data published specifically on the Mauritian ecosystem and what it looks like sometime this fall. And from that survey, we will also be conducting some more in-depth surveys on areas such as skills specifically, for example, and other areas that will help to really bring alive what the ecosystem in Mauritius really looks like.
Wonderful. Thank you. I think that brings us on really nicely to the next part of this webinar, and we're going to talk a little bit about those regulatory frameworks. And I think one of the hesitations, or one of the issues that people face when it's digital money and people are being moved from cash that they can physically feel to this sort of digital world of my money's on my phone, that didn't work very well. So you know, consumer confidence is obviously very, very important. And as Aswin mentioned, it's about educating and making people aware that actually this is very, very safe, if not perhaps safer than stashing you know, wads of money under your mattress. So Tilotma, I'd love to bring you in on this. This is your area of expertise. How's the Bank of Mauritius looking at the regulatory frameworks around all of this innovation that's coming into the market?
Yeah, thank you, Darren. The Bank of Mauritius has come a very long way from interbank payments that were being made via telex in the 90s to the setting up of an innovative digital platform which makes banking, e-commerce and mobile payments interoperable to encourage digital payments. But the setting up of this platform, the National Payment Switch, which is branded as MOCAS, required a legal framework. So the National Payment Systems Act was enacted in January 2019. It's a comprehensive framework for the regulation, oversight, and supervision of all players in the payments domain. So it provides an environment that gives a level playing field for fintechs also. So all entrants in this domain have to abide by the same rules and principles. We are coming up shortly with the regulations for licensing of payment service providers. The NPS Act, as I said, provides an enabling environment for new entrants, but it also provides safeguards for customers. As regulator, the Bank of Mauritius has the mandate to ensure that customers are being protected, because as you well said, today your money resides on your mobile. So we need regulations to ensure that people are being protected. The NPS Act has dedicated a section to consumer protection. It has put in place dispute mechanisms, provision for disclosure of fees to users of digital payments, and also a complaint mechanism. And with regard to operators which will offer wallets, there is a requirement to ensure that the fiat money provided by users of those facilities reside within a trust account with a commercial bank. Now, the purpose of this trust account is to make sure that if tomorrow an operator has any problem, if it becomes insolvent, the money of the users will not be mingled with the funds of the operator. And the Bank of Mauritius will issue directives how to redistribute back the money to the users. The law also makes provision for funds which have not been claimed by users for more than 7 years. So what we call, in this case, abandoned funds will have to be lodged with the Bank of Mauritius, and the users can claim back that money. And also, electronic money does not have an expiry. So once you have put your money in a wallet, an operator cannot tell you that, okay, after 1 year or after 2 years, you cannot claim back that money. So we consider this as a very important aspect for security of public money in that wallet. Now, with regard to applications, when a payment service provider intends to provide a service to the public, it needs to apply for a license from the Bank of Mauritius. And as part of the processing of those applications, we assess the applicant on several aspects that will ensure the security of people dealing with that payment service provider. Firstly, we need information on the applicant to make sure that the applicant is bona fide. We assess the business plan submitted to assess the viability of the project. We look also at the governance arrangement that provides details on procedures put in place to mitigate risk associated with that project. And we also require the applicant to have in place customer protection procedures that would take into consideration dispute resolutions and complaints procedures. And on top of that, applicants are also required to have a data protection policy. And I think this is one of the issues that is very crucial to make sure that confidentiality of data is respected. And additionally, these applicants, they have to abide by other relevant laws, such as the Data Protection Act, the Financial Intelligence and Anti-Money Laundering Act, and other guidelines that are issued by the Bank of Mauritius. Once we have assessed the application and we are satisfied that we may give the license to that applicant, the applicant is required to undergo a pilot phase. And during that pilot phase, we ensure that all requirements are being complied with. That is a very important stage during which we can identify whether there are shortcomings in the systems and allow the participant to rectify those shortcomings. And as Aswin has said, we have provided a platform for integration of all those players. When those players, they apply for integration in the instant payment system, they have to undergo a process, a 3-stage process it is.
Yeah, so they have to go through testing, pre-certification, and then they move to production.
Yeah, so during that phase also, we can identify any shortcoming in the systems. So these are the safeguards that the Bank of Mauritius has put in place to ensure customer protection.
If I may ask, I know this is not on the brief, but I'm just interested as someone that set up a Mauritian business and went through the process of KYC and all the AML checks, which are obviously there for a very, very valid reason. There's a lot of innovation around digital KYC, facial recognition, biometrics. Is that something the Bank of Mauritius is looking at as well?
Yes, we have received some requests from some players for digital identification of customers. The Financial Action Task issued recently a guidance on digital identity. So the bank is aligning itself with that FATF guidance. We are working towards a framework for digital onboarding of customers. But then one of the requirements of the FATF guidance is that you should have a verification from an independent and reliable source of data for the identification document submitted by any customer wishing to be onboarded. In this respect, there was a legal constraint, and that legal amendment has been completed, and we can now have access to the central population database through a system that will be set up by the Bank of Mauritius for verification of those identification documents submitted. And in parallel, the bank is also working on a central KYC registry, and which can be used when implemented by the players. We are also working with enabler stakeholders, which can assist us in finding better ways to provide a more user-friendly experience for users.
That's good to know. Thank you very much. Again, there's lots of questions which I hopefully we'll get to shortly. But thank you for your insights. Vincent, I think we're going to move on to kind of the penultimate part of this webinar, which is talking about digital payment solutions that are available for SMEs, so specifically SMEs. And I think Sebastien did cover a little bit of that off right at the onset, but maybe you can give us a bit of an understanding of what the current landscape looks like. What are the options for SMEs now, and how you see that improving or being modified over the coming few months?
Hi. Yeah, I think as Aswin mentioned, these are you have the SMEs and the customers, which are two sides of the same coin. How we see that, first for the SMEs, obviously we have, for merchants, card merchants, you have all the card infrastructure, and we keep on investing in that card infrastructure. I think there's also there was a question about the national payment switch. Bank of Mauritius has introduced a new scheme which is not going through MasterCard or Visa, which probably will gain traction. But besides the card thing, I think the strategy is very much for the SME mobile centric. Obviously, there is a whole range of SMEs. There are merchants, non-merchants, and they have all their unique needs in payments. And then you have the big corporates, which have different needs. But really, we're trying to focus on mobile. We recently launched Juice Pro, which is a very first version for the SME to look at their finance. So we'll introduce on the back of this Juice Pro additional payments, and also in the Juice application, which is the customer side of things, we are going to introduce the forthcoming IPS development that Aswin was mentioning, and all sorts of things to actually match these two. Ideally, you would create that interoperable QR code on your Juice Pro, and then you would pay with your Juice, basically, or other applications. Better pay with Juice, but other applications would work, obviously.
Sure. Yeah.
So that's I think one very big thing for us. We want to invest. We want to be interoperable and to use the rails which are growing. So not only the traditional EFTs, but also this IPS and other stuff. Yeah.
I was just going to ask a question. You mentioned QR codes and QR payments, which is becoming, very, very, very popular, not only here on the continent, but in Europe as well. What are the other methods? I mean, again, virtual cards is certainly here in South Africa. There was just an announcement this week that two of the big banks here are now producing virtual cards. That's obviously, again, something that's big in Europe. Do you see there being a place for virtual cards as well?
Interestingly, Mauritius is a bit in between the Asian kind of QR code based thing and the European, which are much more based on cards and contactless cards. So if you go to Europe, you can pay mostly everything with your card, and the card itself is going to be digitalized on your smartphone. So these are two different ways of approaching. To be honest, I don't know where Mauritius would go. I think the two ecosystems can coexist. We are looking also to embark virtual cards, etc. But we see more the QR code, etc. coming first, at least. But I think these are two different ways of achieving the same thing, technical ways. So we'll see how it evolves. Right now, we've invested in the card system more on the contactless side, but not necessarily on the virtualization.
If we may talk about the SMEs for a moment, and I can't remember earlier on, Aswin, I think it was yourself that mentioned about the POS devices, or actually Sebastien, I think it was you, rolling out sort of new POSes, and again something that's very early in its development, but we're certainly starting to hear a lot of talk about soft POS. So the merchant can have the POS on their mobile device and not have to have a physical POS terminal. Do you see that being something that? Yeah. Okay.
Definitely, I think there is a space for the MPOS. I think Sebastien is working hard on that, and to use the card rails to actually having that virtual POS, that mobile POS or whatever, the little thing you plug or the software you plug into an Android device. So yeah, and then you can plug more than just payments on that device. That's the interesting bit for the SME, where you could not only offer them payments, but also like you can imagine a tablet embarking all the services such as accounting and stuff like that on the same device. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Vincent, can I bounce on what you said, and also Bank of Mauritius about, in fact, two different things. I would like to, that's a great initiative of what we are talking about, you know, interoperability, etc. And I have a word that I really like, that is a mix between cooperation and competition, and I name it co-petition. Because yes, of course, we must be all aware that you know, Juice is in competition with Mighty Money, and we are in competition with whoever. And if you go through, everybody is in competition with everybody. But if we do not play the cooperation in this competition capitalism word that I call co-petition, I think that we cannot not evolve. So that's great to promote that, what I will call co-petition. So making partners that by intuition would not have, you know, it's my part and your part, you know, play together. You know, the MIPS leitmotif, our baseline is payment connecting words, but our leitmotif is come and play with us, guys, not under us or over us, with us at the same level. This is come and play with us. You want to play with us? Come and play with. And this is what I want to jump on what Vincent just said. We are talking about, in fact, we did not realize, but we are talking about two different things since the beginning of this conversation. The financial flows and the, what I call the friction points. What is a friction point, according to me, is the interaction, physical or digital or whatever, between a consumer and a merchant. It can be a point of sale, what we call in French a TPE, the paying machine, you know. A friction point is, a QR code is a friction point because it is an identification mode. So we are talking about identification, authentication, and with IPS, we are also talking, or Juice or whatever, or Visa, MasterCard, we are talking about financial flows. So identification, so soft POS, like you were talking about, Vincent. In fact, we must not forget when we talk about digital payments, that digital payment alone means nothing. You know, looking for, you know, replacing cash with just a digital flow, okay, we go contactless, okay, but what about the integration of the act of payment within the complete flow of a merchant, whatever it is, a hotel, a supermarket, whatever. You know, we began a little step with till integration, you know, when you go to big supermarkets in Mauritius, when you pay with some POS in Mauritius, it is already synchronized with a till. Okay, that's a first move, but we can go really further. And this is our philosophy, and the philosophy that we think everybody shall have. Not think just about co-petition within payments, but co-petition with also third parties. And what is a third party for me? A software payroll provider can be a third party. An accounting software can be a third party. CRM software can be a third party. Till vendor machine, an iPad, a tablet, whatever is a third party acting as a part in the ecosystem of a merchant, and payment is part of an ecosystem. It's not only part. It shall be so great to have, you know, I make a payment, I'm recognized, I have my fidelity points automated, I have, I don't know, the gate opening like Chatard Center in front of me, I have, you know, making payment seamless, secured, and integrated within the global ecosystem of what? Of a merchant. The merchant, in my wording, it's the, you know, the guy who is taking money, the merchant, and his client. So I'm not talking about a card holder or an account holder. I'm talking about a guy who is coming to exchange a value with the friction point, which can be, you know, the MPOS, you know, the little machines you can see everywhere. It can be QR codes, it can be NFC, it can be bracelet, it can be the, I don't know, the ID card. Okay, we talk about GDPR, but it can be anything. And this is part of. Darren, you are smiling, I'm stopping.
I am. You got the cue. Thank you. I've just got a couple of other questions for Vincent. I just really wanted to get his view on a couple of things, but thank you for that input. It sounds like as we've been going through this webinar, one of the barriers here is perhaps consumer awareness, not necessarily consumer confidence, because the Bank of Mauritius clearly are doing a very good job on the regulatory frameworks, but it's consumer awareness. Do you see that being a barrier, and if so, how do you and you know, do you've mentioned how do you as a brand try and get that out there? Is it just about spending a lot of money on marketing, or are there some other ways?
Just before moving to that question, I think to support what Sebastien mentioned, it's much more about open banking and APIs. Because behind the scene of whatever device, whatever thing, there is the glue of putting it to rails, etc. And open banking is not limited to payment, by the way. It can cover credit, can cover all other type. We at MCB have a very strong open banking strategy. Obviously, right now these systems are much closed loop. So to use the Juice QR, for example, it's not interoperable, etc. But the plan is really to expand that and to give APIs to Fintechs or merchants directly to plug that, and then to do some kind of routing through the rails, the various rails. I think this open API is really. And we have an innovation lab here, and we're trying to look at what's going on in the market here, but also outside. Not so much do international payments, or we look at remittances. So this API strategy is really important, and hopefully within the next 6 months, we'll make good progress to offer our customers and SMEs some plugin toolkit. Back to the question. I think there are a lot of limitations. I think there are, as we discussed before, just the usage, the habits. I think Aswin mentioned people are going to the ATM in order to get cash to pay at the supermarket, not using their card. So, and there is a lot, for example, in Mauritius, probably you don't know, but there is the cash check. So you can give someone a check, and he will go to the counter and get some money for that. So, and these are, Mauritius is a unique place. The very high level of banking penetration. Almost everyone has got a bank account, but they still use things that were used in Europe, for example, some time ago, which have been replaced, like in Sweden or elsewhere, by electronic money. So I think that there is an indication for both. I think there was mention on the question for both the merchants or the SMEs and the consumer. And that's going to take a bit of time. Also, I think there is a question of cost. Using the card, there is a merchant commission, and some people are avoiding using that because of this cost. So I think all these new systems will facilitate that adoption. And then there is what's being mentioned, the convenience. If it's too complicated to get your thing and do the QR code, and it's too slow, etc., people will not adapt. It should be instant, easy to use, and across the various payment. I go to a pharmacy just next to the office, and you have to pay to the till, and you have like the juice QR, the empty QR, 3 POS. It's like there is a wall of payments. And at the end of the day, you just give your card because, or you get some cash because you're a bit overwhelmed. So convenience and integration is really something we should work. So I think adoption would go through these things. We've been mentioning also eKYC, digital signature. I think for onboarding to new platform, if you have to go to a branch or a physical outlet, signing piece of paper and giving your ID, etc., that's not convenient. So you will not use that kind of new payment thing. Yeah. So just to summarize, interoperability, I think it's very important. I think we push that mobile first approach, and then this open API. Hopefully, behind the scene, we also facilitate the convenience and the adoption by the general public.
Wonderful, Vincent. Thank you. Thank you very much. Lisa, are you there? Do we have time for a Q&A? I don't know how much time we've got. I know we've run slightly.
Darren,
yes.
Darren, sorry. Do you allow me to just say two words on?
Let me just ask Lisa if we've got some time. Let me just ask Lisa if we've got some time. Lisa?
I am keen to move on to the Q&A, but if it's literally 2 words, go ahead.
No, because I like the word when we talk about digitalization, and I like what Sebastien was mentioning. I was thinking about that before coming to this meeting. You know, when we talk about digitalization, it's end-to-end process, right? From start to end. And I saw that in LinkedIn last time, and I wanted to share with everyone on that. You know, when you walk to a door, sometimes there's flapping door which opens, you put your stuff in your cart and it comes on the other side. So I like there was a video where you actually put the cart in and the cart comes out and the door opens, right? Inside that, in fact, you had a man who was actually taking the cart from one side and pushing it on the other side. And that's when the door would open. So it's a bit like that. So sometimes you have some of the participants who say we are in digitalization, but in fact it's only part of the process which is digitalized, and this is where inconvenience come into play. So I think this is one of the important aspects where FinTech can actually work together with the banks, some of those participants, in order to digitalize that start to end, so that it's a seamless process for the customer. So I think that's the first one. Just second one, last one, is on the QR code. I had a friend, we were talking about QR code, and I would like to mention it. You know, when we talk about card, it's as if the merchant is actually, you know, when you go, what is instinct for people is to open your wallet and then you give the cash to the merchant, right? And with QR code, we are doing almost the same thing. With card, it's the opposite. So actually, it's as if the merchant is taking the money from your pocket. So they take the card, they swipe the card for you, and you enter the PIN, and they take the money from your bank account, right? While with QR code, it's just the opposite. So it's you who scan the QR code, and you are the one who is actually giving the money to the merchant. So this is the experience, the difference between those two aspects, which I found much more comfortable for people. Yeah, so I just gave on those 2 things.
Thanks, Aswin. Thank you very much. No, thank you. Lisa, how long do we have, just so I know how many questions we can get through?
I think we could probably do another 10 minutes,
okay.
As long as all participants are okay with that.
Okay, great. First question then, Tilotma, I think this is really for you. So someone's asked, after the banks are onboarded, as mentioned, when will the FinTech companies be onboarded? And I'm guessing this is into the switch, right?
Yeah, so I think I have already replied to that. So we're planning that by end of August, we'll have all banks. So we had the support of everyone. So I have to be very thankful to those banks. They've done a big effort. So we have to admit it. It's not easy for banks to actually get onto to do that interconnectivity, to do the development, and to be ready. But most of them have responded really positively to it. So we're planning to have all the banks ready by end of August.
I'd like to add something to this, please. We already have one mobile operator onboarded on the system. And we have a second participant who is at the pre-certification stage. So we are hoping that in 1 month's time, in 1 month time, it will be integrated in the system. We are also processing a few applications for license. In accordance to the IPS operation rules, you need to be a holder of a payment service provider license so that you are eligible for participation in the IPS. So once we have finished with this licensing, so these participants also will be able to integrate the IPS.
Okay, great, thank you. And then I think probably another question, which is the Bank of Mauritius planning to come up with its own interchange card? So a competitor to Visa or MasterCard. Is that something that you're looking at? Does that fit within the remit?
At the moment, we haven't made any planning on that aspect. So we are much more focused on interoperability at the moment, on interconnecting the members, the participants. And there's a huge focus currently with the instant payment, because we think that for the time being, the payment rail, which is quite missing, is the mobile platform, the interoperability on the platform. While on the card aspect, we do have those interoperability. So we much focus on that aspect. If there's a demand in the market, we may consider it. But for the time being, our focus, we much more focus on getting all the banks onboarded by August 1st. So once we pass that up and see the pickup, then we may go back and check that part of the strategy.
Okay. Another question. Again, this is probably for the Bank of Mauritius again. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry, guys. I guess it's not often that we get two experts from the Bank of Mauritius on a sort of public webinar. But how is? Actually, I take this back. This is not for Bank of Mauritius. I think I've read this wrong. How is MCB engaging in terms of innovation and partnerships with fintechs?
I
apologize, Vincent. I cut you out.
Okay. As I say, we set up this digital factory. We have an innovation lab, and part of this is to get understanding of the ecosystem. So there is Sebastien, there is Bank of Mauritius, and there's tons of others. We're doing some hackathons and the likes, virtual nowadays. So the idea is to really get these people together, and in terms of cooperation with fintech, we pretty much want to have our own open APIs, and then they can use it for having value-added services and stuff like that. So if anyone is actually interested, please reach to me, and then I will route. But we have a guy who is in charge of the ecosystem. So an ecosystem is the developers, the universities, the regulators, the fintech, all these people, which is nationed, I think, with the fintech hub as well, which is gaining traction actually.
And I think there's a follow-up question actually from Andrew. Andrew said it's great to see a lot of focus on the technical aspects of working with fintechs, APIs and sandboxes. But what is the overall organizational readiness of the banks to work with fintechs? So banks with fintechs in the areas of policy, processes, culture, digital skills, ecosystem interaction, etc.
We had a lot to invest in terms of the technology, and it's a bit slow in terms of deploying all the bits and pieces. I won't go into the middleware, but there are some big bits and pieces. Then in terms of the process, etc., I think we've created the business banking division, and that will also look at these things from a more of a assisting the entrepreneur perspective. In terms of processes, etc., we are investing a lot to onboard customers. Obviously, there is this EKYC and all that stuff. So the idea is to get all these, and also a new type of attitude, I would say, from a very traditional bank to much more supporting new actors. So we are investing there, and I hope you'll see the development coming to market very soon.
Fantastic. I think we're going to take one more question, and this is open to anyone that wants to answer, because I think you all may have some views. Where's it gone? Here we go. We've seen an undisputable growth in mobile payments and online payments, what with COVID-19. How would you rank the consumer reasons for this growth in Mauritius? Is it staying at home, social distancing, risk of transmitting the virus, or any other factors? Sebastien, maybe you'd like to take this one?
I unlocked my microphone, so therefore, yes. No, I think there were multiple reasons. The first reason that, in fact, we had no other choice. We couldn't go easily to the supermarket, etc. Okay, therefore, yesterday, I was fueling my car, you know, I live at Vaqua, and I pay with my credit card. And the guy gave me this big machine, you know, and I was, how will I touch this machine, you know? So I grabbed the machine, I put my card, I put my thing and my PIN, and then I asked him, where can I wash my hands, please? Because in fact, if you look at it closely, POS, you know, the POS in the meaning of paying machine, is even, you know, could have more virus than a note, you know. Is it a good word, a note? Le billet de banque, a note. Because you have thousands of people touching this machine every day, but with no wiping. I see it, there's no wiping on these machines. So, yes, I think that people were afraid of COVID, and they were also discovering, okay, because merchants didn't have a choice to sell, so they went online. So, oh, did you see my wife or my husband? But this guy is online. Let us give it a try. Because before COVID, there was this guy, this merchant was not online. So there was opportunity. There was fear of COVID, I think. There was conjunction because we couldn't go out. And when I see my statistics, because now we have hundreds, thousands of merchants onboarded on our systems, yes, after COVID has lowered down the e-commerce, if we talk about e-commerce transaction, but it has remained at a level we never had reached before COVID, even if we can go now freely in supermarkets. So that's the one thing. And yes, I think I answer partly.
But I think, yeah, COVID was, there were two things. First, people were getting stuck. They can physically go out, and then they were afraid of the virus. But I mean, Mauritius is a relatively small place. You don't need to be so much digital because everything is within distance. I think what we saw in the trends is we got there, and now it's staying there. It's not going down. So both from an e-commerce perspective, or a contactless payment, not to touch the POS, etc. But then I think we will need more education, more convenience to get to that level. So I think we got some of the people who were not using digital payment on the digital payment to simplify during the COVID period, but it's not enough. This needs to be continuous education.
In fact, just to rebound on what Vincent said, it's so cool now.
Sebastien, you've got 15 seconds.
Now I take time with my children instead of making queue to buy carrots at the supermarket, and that's cool.
Listen, thank you so much, everyone. We are out of time, and I apologise for overrunning, Lisa. I do apologise, but this was such an informative conversation. I've personally learned a lot about the Mauritian ecosystem, the wonderful work that's going on with the Bank of Mauritius in terms of the regulatory framework, some of the innovation that's coming up, the support, the education for SMEs and entrepreneurs. Lisa, thank you so much for asking me to moderate this. It's been my absolute pleasure. And to all the panelists, thank you. Really, really enjoyable. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you very much for your valuable time.
Yeah.
Thank you also.
And on behalf of the Mauritius African FinTech Hub, I'd like to say thank you to all of our panelists today and also to our moderator, Darren. I think just to echo you there, we've had a fantastic discussion today, and you know, we'll be releasing this video on our website, so people will be able to go back over that and look back at those technical details. So watch this space. And if you would like to stay up to date with more events from the Mauritius Africa FinTech Hub, then please subscribe to our mailing list, which can be found on our website. And also follow us on all of our social media channels. And we'd like to thank all of the attendees today for coming along, submitting their questions to our panelists. And yes, we hope to see you at an event again soon. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.